For your viewing pleasure, this broadcast of the Municipal Council meeting of Alpena is made possible by the funding provided by the City of Alpena. Thank you for your generosity.
Good. Good evening and welcome to Alpena City Council meeting August 5th, 2013. Roll please.
Eiler. Here. Nielsen. Here. Nowak.
Here.
Sexton.
Here.
Walagora.
Here. Rise for the pledge. Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, everyone had an opportunity to review the minutes from regular session July 15th, 2013. So, no corrections? Can you approve and file?
Pardon?
You need action on that?
No.
Sorry, my meeting's confused. I'm sorry. Some do, some don't. Any modifications to the agenda this evening? Okay, any citizens appearing before council on agenda or non-agenda items are allowed 5 minutes each to address their concerns. This is the only time during a council meeting that citizens are allowed to address the council. If you do, please come to the podium and state your name and address for our records.
My name is Jessica Hatch. My address is 1383 Ferncliff Drive, Alpena. Basically, I'm here today to talk to you about the proposed plaza going up in downtown. I'm part owner of Take 5 Deli in downtown Alpena, and we've been in business for over 9 years in downtown. And in those 9 years, I've seen a lot of great things happen in downtown. I personally think that the ideas behind the plaza are wonderful, but I think that the location is wrong. I just don't see how we can think about, even consider eliminating the parking that is badly needed in downtown. We currently have over 5 parks that are located in the downtown area. On any given day, at any given time, you can drive through downtown and just for a moment observe some of those parks. Look at how many people are using them. Go during busy times, go during non-busy times. You'll see that they're utilized, but they're not packed. There's picnic tables that are currently lining 2nd Avenue. Go downtown during lunchtime. Go downtown during dinner time. See how many of those picnic tables are full. Go on nice days, of course, because if you go and it's raining, you're not going to see very many people. I believe that we can take some of the awesome ideas that are behind the plaza and we can implement them into some of the existing parks that we already have. I think that the pocket park between the Owl Cafe and Little Dreamers is a perfect location to put up picnic tables, maybe a bulletin board. I know I've talked to the DDA, I've talked to Leslie about this, and she has said that some of those things are in the works. I've seen that some of the statements that say that the 85% of plazas that are built on former parking lots and that they've caused sales and services to double in the areas where they've been built. I couldn't find a lot of information on that on the internet, so I don't really have anything to compare it to, but I would like to know how those areas that have had those increases have really, how do they compare to Alpena, population-wise, size-wise, downtown-wise. Our downtown isn't huge in comparison to many downtowns. I mean, if you're trying to compare Alpena to Grand Rapids, there's a huge difference. So a plaza like this might work really well in Grand Rapids, but we're not that big. Do we actually need something that big? Other things, basic issues that other people have had too, is I understand that they want to put a ice skating rink in there in the wintertime, but we live in northern Michigan, and there's going to be a lot of times where it won't be as used as a parking lot that gets used every day. I want downtown to grow and be prosperous. My family and I depend on it. We own a business down there. It means a lot to us. We currently have to pay $11 for 8 parking spots so that our customers have a place to park. Of course, a lot of times those spots are full. I know that the parking will cause issue for a lot of downtown businesses. I've talked to a lot of other owners downtown, and they all have the same concerns. Some of them don't think anybody wants to listen, so they don't bother to say anything. It's one of those things where it's talked about, and they're like, well, we're not going to say anything. Well, I don't want to stand up and say anything. Some of them feel like they will be outcast if they say something. A lot of them are the same way, though. They feel the ideas are great, the location is bad. Basically, all I'm asking is before, I know you guys aren't making a decision anytime soon, talk to the business owners, do your research. Yes, it's doubled services in other areas. Where were those areas? How did they compare to Alpena? Size-wise, population-wise, location-wise. Maybe they had 5 parking lots that didn't get used as much as ours does. Our downtown is a small, cozy place, and we have cozy parks that could easily be transformed into more usable space, that we could take some of these good ideas behind the plaza and use them there. I know the plaza has also been a place where they say we can do entertainment and things like that. We have festivals downtown, we have the band shell downtown, we have entertaining places already downtown that do get used. Do we really need another one? I think it's a great idea, but I don't think it's the right time, and I don't think it's the right place. So, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, announcements this evening. A is the introduction of the new Planning and Development Director. Greg, I think you're doing that.
That's good timing, isn't it? Planning and,
Yes. After 15 months of doing double duty, I'm very pleased and happy to announce that we do have a new Planning and Development Director for the city of Alpena. It is Adam Paul. It's spelled P-O-L-L, but pronounced Paul.
Correct, apparently it's a German thing.
Adam is from Michigan, the Cedar Springs area. Grew up there, but he spent since 2008 he has worked in Waterloo, Iowa for their planning development department. And he has a wife, Courtney, and a son, Hunter, and a daughter, Scarlett. They are 3 and 1. Right now, the family is still down around Grand Rapids.
Correct.
And as he's looking for, at this point in time, probably a house to rent until they get familiar with the area. So very happy to have Hunter. Okay, I got Hunter. Yeah, I'm happy to have Hunter here too, but to have, geez, now you give me, I get all confused here. Adam here with us, and he'll be starting tomorrow, and will be his first day. And I look forward to working with him for many years to come. I don't know if you wish to say anything or not.
I think you covered all bases. I very much look forward to working very closely with everybody here, council and staff.
Okay, excellent. Thank you, Greg. Adam? And B is nominating petitions for 2 seats on the city council will be accepted in the clerk's office until 4 p.m. on August 13th, 2013.
Just wanted to remind everybody that if you do want to run for council for 2 seats that are open next year, to get your petitions in to us by next week.
Tonight's consent agenda. A is bills to be allowed in the amount of $431,201.39. B is budget amendment for project to be carried over into fiscal year 2013-14, replacement of windows and doors on the 2nd Avenue Bridge Building, $26,900. C is to designate Police Chief Joel Jett as the Freedom of Information Coordinator for the Public Safety Department.
I move we approve the consent agenda.
second. Pick.
Nielsen?
Yes.
Noah?
Yes.
Sexton?
Yes.
Walagora?
Right.
Eiler?
Yes.
Proclamations this evening. We don't have a public hearing this evening. Report of officers, option to opt out of even year November election.
I just thought I'd bring this up to council. There have been a number of new election laws, and one of them is that we can move our elections, which are odd years for councils when they run for office, to even year November elections, and then they would be more like with the governor's races and the presidential. We currently hold our city elections every other year in the odd November dates. And the advantages I pointed out to you, one obviously is cost savings. If you didn't have just our election, that would save us, I put here $92.90. I always round it off. It's approximately $10,000 to hold an election. And I explained to you, the cost of the ballots, the programming, the polling buildings, et cetera, is what adds that cost up. And the other thing is labor savings. Our DPW take all of our equipment out to the polls the day before the elections, pick them up the day after the elections, and we have all kinds of internal preparation, getting all the supplies ready for the election, testing all the equipment, so there's a lot of labor. The disadvantages are, it may create a longer ballot in the even-numbered years if you have your presidential candidates and other candidates, and then our council people would be, the local elections are always on the bottom, so ours would be on the bottom of a ballot. If we had proposals, those also would be added to it. Some ballots aren't real busy anyway, some are, so that may or may not be an item. And then we could get lost, the city's issues could get lost with all the state and federal candidates and proposals. Again, if it's a real long ballot, people would have to know to go where to look for our proposals. Not real hard, it's never probably going to be more than two-sided a ballot. That's always been the goal of the state, to keep them just two-sided, so. And then the longer time between elections, just for us, would mean our workers, our precinct workers may need a little bit more training, because you tend to forget the law, and the law changes so much, you tend to forget that in between, if it's a 2-year time frame in between. So I wanted to bring that to your attention. If you are interested in doing it, it says in the year in which the resolution is adopted, the city's regular elections would then be on the even year general. And I gave you some examples, the 2 seats that are up in 2013 this year. If we went to an even year, then the next, it would be 2016 when those seats would come due. And the term would be 2017 to 2020, and it would be a 4-year term. However, this first year would be a 3-year term. There's going to be that until we can get everybody on a new cycle. And then the 3 seats that would be up for 2015, if we go to the even cycle, you could bring it back to 2014, and it would be 2015 to 2018 term. It sounds confusing, but either we can do a 3-year or a 5-year, if you are interested in doing something like that and getting on an even year with everybody else. And then I did mention that special elections can always be called. You have 4 times per year. It's consolidated elections now. February, March, August, or November. Normally people stay away from them now unless they're going to piggyback on someone else's election just because of the expense. But you could still have an election, say if a proposal came up or you wanted to do something. Now it would defeat the purpose of saving money by having just a single election rather than piggybacking on a different election. Again, if you want to pursue change in the election date, a public hearing would need to be held and a resolution adopted in compliance with MCL 168-642.
And that's how you would get past the fact that our charter calls for a 4-year term.
Yes, the law
Okay.
supersedes that. It did mention that it would supersede the charter.
Karen, so for 2014, the election would be actually a year early.
Yes.
Yes.
If you wanted to do it that way,
If you do it that way.
If you wanted to approve a resolution in 2014, then the first elections would be 2016, which would make 5-year terms instead of 3-year. Just to get us, you could do it either way. Bill helped me out by looking everything up, but it's silent on how to get those terms into the even years.
If citizens voted us in for 4, could you really turn it into 5?
Well, that's
Is that
why we
wasn't-
want to know before we would do something like that, so then we would put it on a ballot. You know, the language would say for a 5-year term. So,
Or 3?
Or 3 if you go.
or a 3.
if you if you adopt this year, then you automatically, you wouldn't go to like 2015 wouldn't turn into an additional 3-year. It would be, has to be adopted within that year for it to.
It would start in the next even year.
The next even year.
I interpret it that way, which would be 2014.
Okay.
So if you did anybody that ran this year for the 2014 beginning term, then they would have a 3-year term. But we'd have to get that done in time for the ballot language, which will be needed by, I believe, the end of August.
And would that language have to be, would it not have to be in the public hearing language, in the language for the public hearing? You would have to have it clearly.
Yes, and it might take a while to get the public hearing language, together. And I guess tonight I wanted you to be aware of this new law, if you want to discuss it, if you even want to do it. And if you do want to do it, we can figure out the logistics and come back to you with everything that we would need to do.
So there's no rush to the public hearing? It
Not at all.
doesn't have to occur by August, the end of
Oh,
August? Okay.
no, but if you don't do it for this election, then it would have to start later on.
Right.
It would have to start the next cycle.
Yeah.
Which would be.
The
well, just for-
2015
For
election.
example's
Yeah.
sake, it would
Right.
be me and
Yeah.
Mike and Susan's
Right.
election.
Right.
Then at that time, we would advertise, that it's going to be even years, and we would tell them the terms, and we could do that too.
To do the 3-year term, and then the next cycle would be the next one.
Right.
And then we'd get everybody back on a 4-year cycle, but it would be even numbered years. And maybe, if we take our time too, I can find out more about the law. It's pretty cut and dry. It doesn't add a lot to what we already know about it.
Karen, do you know, and I wouldn't hold you to this, but about how many more people vote in a presidential election than they do just when it's just local?
Right.
The presidential is the busiest election with 50 to 60% of the voters. General elections can go 15% to
So
maybe
quiet.
20, 25. It's very quiet. Very, very slow.
But, yeah, if you go to this, obviously, one group of you will fall during presidential election years, and the others would be the midterms.
Yeah, that's true. Another
Because-
good point, right?
So some of you will be during midterm elections like it would be in this coming year in 14 as a midterm, if you're on.
Would be the governor's race rather than the.
Right, and also, Congress
Yes.
midterm and all that.
Yeah.
So, that's one thing where it says here, longer time between elections. Once we get onto the 4-year cycle, it won't be any different than we're in now.
It would, because we wouldn't have odd-year elections.
No, but you're still every 2 years, but you're on even years rather than every 2 years in odd years.
Now, some people
So you
have
still have 2
different
years
terms.
between elections.
We don't have 2 years now between elections, though. We
we
have
have-
elections every single year.
But, okay, but
Yeah.
I mean as far as city elections.
They would be every 2 years.
They,
then.
just like we are now. Those would be the same. I see what you're
Uh-huh.
saying. You got others, okay.
We would eliminate every odd number year. There would be no elections, probably. There could always be special elections. There could be millage requests from a different entity.
But a millage request from any entity, us or, well, particularly us, we would have to, it would cost nearly $10,000 just to run a millage on an off cycle.
And
Where
if
right
we're
now-
already having an election, somebody else can piggyback on ours for no cost.
And we can piggyback on theirs for no cost.
Right.
Right?
That's the savings right there.
That's
the
what
10,000.
it is. Would there be, did you factor in the amount of money it would take to do advertising and I hesitate to say teaching, but so that everybody was very clear where to look for the local proposals or candidates or whatever it is? Would you need additional dollars for that?
Very, very little, because a lot of what we do, we can do here, and we have the YouTube now, that's free. We have sample ballots, we have cable, we have our website. So no, that would not be, in fact, it would save us money because we don't have all those individual costs for advertising. The county will sometimes, in the presidentials, they'll put all the advertising together.
Karen, I noticed you didn't make a recommendation. Is it too close to call in your mind, or just?
From my standpoint, I want to save money and I want to save time. But you have to work with, the people. And what do they want? I know you guys have to consider that, so what would be more advantageous maybe to the city? I think the trend is gonna be going that way, where we're consolidating more and more, just like going down to 4 elections a year. That happened because there were so many special elections throughout the year, all over the place, just costing money and everybody had a special interest. Now it's like consolidated down and that's happening more and more.
Now, would this inhibit people from having millages as often as we have them?
It might, because they may think, you know, I'll wait till next year when there's going to be some elections to put my millage request on. But if they need the money at a certain point,
Right.
then they would put it on. They'd have their own.
And they would have to pay for it,
Yeah.
right?
I don't know, I'll probably might not sound good, but I guess my concern is if in a local election, you have 15% of people come out. And then national, you have 50%. If we lump our local issues in a national year, that's a lot of people voting on local issues who may not necessarily care or follow it or whatnot. And I just wonder how that changes the dynamics of our ability to pass this or that or the other, and how cumbersome that is. But that's
And you know,
just a concern. That's a lot of people that would suddenly be voting on local issues that weren't doing it before. Maybe that's our opportunity to get more people involved and inform them. I don't know. I don't want people looking at the thing going, I don't know, and not knowing either. So I guess part of that would be on us to make sure people were educated about it. I don't know.
well, and something to consider too is that you can wait a year or two and see how this law plays out, see how many municipalities start going that way, see the pros and cons of what they're finding out too. There's no hurry on this at all. The election just became law this year. I'm sorry, the law just became correct, whatever, this year. So I just wanted to bring that to your attention. If you need anything from me to get you more information, or I can bring it back at a later date, I guess just let us know.
So not being any rush to it, like you said, but in the event that we wanted to follow, that we wanted to get out in front of it and do it now, what you're saying is that there's still an opportunity to do that in this coming November election?
It would be too tight. We need a resolution, and then we need a public hearing, and then we need to bring it back.
The statute says it's not effective until after December 31st of the year in which the resolution is passed.
Right.
So even if you passed it tonight, even if it was public hearing, it wouldn't affect this election. It would affect the 2014 election.
So we've got about a year and a half to decide, or a year to decide.
If you don't do it this year, yes.
Well, but same rule is going to apply next year. If we do it next year, it's not going to affect 2015. In 2014. I mean, there's going to be a year lag because, well, when you read this, it's clear as mud, and then when you read it 3 times, it's even clearer than mud. But it says, if a resolution is permitted under section 642A, 1, 2, or 4, well, 4 would apply to us because 4 is the one that says if you're on odd years right now, then you can go to even years. And that's what we want to do if that's what you want to do. We want to go from an odd year election to an even year election. But it says, if the resolution is permitted under 642A4, January 1 of the year in which the change in the date of the section takes effect. But you go back to 642, and it says, that language that Karen has in her memo, which is if the council adopts the resolution in compliance with the section after December 31st of the year in which the resolution is adopted, the city's regular election is at the even year general election, and its primary is at the even year primary election in the next year. But if the next year is an odd year, then it's not that year. It's got to be the next even election. So if you passed it right now, it's not going to affect 13.
Right.
So what happens in 14?
Well, it wouldn't affect 14 for us either because we
Yeah,
don't
you don't have an
a
election.
14. Yeah, it's really not going to affect us until 16.
So the people who would be up for election in 15 would automatically get an extra year?
That's the
And
way I
would-
read it.
And would wait until
Yeah.
16, so they'd have a 5-year term
Now,
instead of a two. Instead of,
this is just, the statute actually, 168-642 was amended effective June 11th. 642A was amended effective March 31st. Not sure why they didn't amend them at the same time, why there's a little bit of lag, but there really isn't enough out there yet because this just came effective June 11th, 2013, in which you could do it. So it really doesn't say with any certainty if it becomes a 3-year term or a 5-year term. It makes sense that it would be, that the folks that are already there would be extended 1 year, that the people that were up for election in 15 would stay on until 16 because you're not going to have an election in 15 now because you moved it to the even year. That's the way I would read it. It would extend the people's term right now 1 year. That's the reasonable way to read it. But I can't tell you that with certainty because that's unfortunately probably for the courts to figure out when somebody
We don't
challenges
stop
it
them very
somewhere.
often, do we?
Right. No, I don't see any reason in not waiting to see who
Okay.
tries it and what they
Okay.
stumble over.
And I'll try to bring it back.
Change
to
it for this
We're
election
gonna wait.
anyway.
Right.
Yeah, it wouldn't change it
Clarification.
for this one no matter what. Right?
Yeah.
It wouldn't change anything. We'd still have the election in 13. There'd
so.
still be election this fall for
So
two
when they have an
seats.
election in 13, which would be for 4 years, in essence, they would be for 5 because they'd have to wait till the next even year. If you change somewhere afterwards, you would, whoever, the 2 elected this year would be for,
Gain a year.
in essence, would be for a 5-year term.
Correct.
For the
Or-
first year,
or
but
three.
then thereafter 4
Well,
years.
It could be 3 too, though, right?
Until you get a court that says with certainty, no, that's what they meant. And so I say it's not exactly clear as to if the term is shortened by a year or extended by a year.
I think that'd be the first thing that they would write.
Yes.
Right.
You'd think.
But it gives you time to think about the pros and cons and,
That's because they wrote it at lunchtime on a napkin.
I can bring it back to you once we know a little bit more and maybe you have a chance to think about it. And
Yeah, if you learn
Oh,
some more.
I'm sure they'll send out clarification.
Tomorrow.
All right, anything else on that? And if you
No.
want to just bring back any information you
Yes, I
find.
sure will.
Whenever you know.
Okay. And then B is Local Officers Compensation Commission.
This is kind of another housekeeping that I thought I would bring to council. I'm going to skip around a little bit in the memo because I want to first give you an overview that the Local Officers Compensation Commission, it was formed under Chapter 2, Article 3 of the Alpena Code of Ordinances to set the salary of the council members. The commission is made up of 5 members who meet every odd-numbered year. They're given the current council's historical meeting and attendance and your pay, and they're also given the salaries of council from other comparable cities. The Home Rule City Act states that the commission determines the salaries of the local elected officials, which determination shall be the salaries unless the legislative body by resolution adopted by 2/3 of the members elected and serving on the legislative body reject them. In case of rejection, the existing salaries shall prevail. So for the past several occasions, the council tended to reject the commission's recommendations and suggest alternatives, therefore causing some frustration for the compensation committee. Though council does have the right to reject the commission's recommendations, if they do so, then council's only alternative is keep the existing salaries. That's something kind of we all learned. We just reviewed all the notes and talked to everybody about that. And that's why when I recently contacted Joanne LaFleche Gallagher, she was the former chair of the city's compensation commission, we discussed reappointment of one of the members, and that's why I called her. While Joanne is no longer active on the commission, we had a good discussion on some of the challenges of the commission. And one, I suggest that maybe part of our problem is that the role of the compensation commission wasn't clear to the council. And we have council people changing all the time, so they probably don't really know what the role of the compensation commission is. And then I think the process can be improved, and I noticed when I went back quite a few years, I would ask council, is there anything you'd like me to give to the compensation committee? Any suggestions or concerns or meetings that you go to a lot that you think maybe should have a higher pay? And then I would take those and send them to the compensation committee before they met every other year, and so they could consider all that at that time, rather than trying to change what they suggest afterwards. And then it might also be advantageous to the compensation commission or the chair to come to a council meeting. The last time I believe they suggested getting rid of the per diem for meetings and making a flat salary for everyone, but they weren't here to answer questions, so that did not help, and so possibly having them here would help. So the city ordinance states that the procedure for establishing the compensation of elected officials may be changed by charter amendment or revision. And just my question to you is, do you want the process to be reviewed and updated, or do you want us to make the suggested changes that I just did and try to continue with the process we have?
I would really like to know more about the commission, and I would like to hear from them. I would like them, after they've met, I'd like to learn more about it.
So keep the process the same, have them bring recommendations, but have them come then to the council meeting to present those?
Well, yes, but before that happens, I would like to know a little more. If you have something written that you might share with us, or I just feel that I don't know enough about it. How did that form? I see the Home Rule City Act. How long has this been happening? How many years have we been doing these things like that?
Oh, at least 25 years. I went back to 1989 in my notes. So it's been a long time. Now, the charter first established salaries, and then we were allowed by the Home Rule Act to make an ordinance to form a commission. And that's what we did, and I attached that to your memos. That's the ordinance that was established, saying the role of the commission. You know, five people.
Right.
When
And
was
then I
that?
guess the big question is, why did council not take their suggestions? Why did they not want to take the suggestion?
Since we voted a pay cut.
2 times.
They what?
You should explain that, yeah.
No, those were good things.
Yeah, we just felt we should share the pain, and first we cut our salary 10%, and then things kept getting worse, and we cut our salaries by 50%.
That's good to know, because I thought, well, maybe they
But
wanted
that
more.
was midway.
Yeah.
The 50% was midway through.
Yeah.
That had
Sure.
nothing to do with this commission's
I see.
recommendation at all.
Yeah.
But prior to that, their last recommendation was, the council that was here just didn't see that it was, that the compensation that they had was going to save overall. I kind of felt the vibe when we made that decision to reject their recommendation was that we were okay to take basically a bigger hit than what they had recommended. And because there's no dialogue, there's here it is, you either take it or reject it. You don't say, well, how about if there is none of that. It's here it is, you can either take this or just keep what you have, and so we opted to keep what we had. And then later we established another pay cut, but that was kind of aside from what they had recommended.
Well, how would we want to change it? Would we want to change the way we do things? I mean, would we rather dialogue with them than just keep or reject? Could we
Yeah.
have dialogue
Yeah.
without interfering with the intent of the Home Rule City Act?
I think we can, but I don't know to what extent we can, and that would be more of a
Yeah.
question as to how
There seems to be that line that
There's a
are
lot-
you
there's a-
interfering with them or
Right.
feel like you're putting
Right.
pressure on them
Exactly.
in one direction or another?
So had they come, let's just say they had come the last time, they would be able to maybe give us a little bit more insight as to how they came up with what they came up with.
Oh.
But we still wouldn't be able to go back and forth with the numbers.
Still
The
be a
original,
yes or no.
We'd have known a little
It's
bit,
either
maybe
accept or
more,
reject.
but it would still be an accept or reject, because
Oh.
then we would be negotiating at our,
Exactly.
the original intent of this law was to take those decisions out of the local council's hands.
And that's a
And
good
to
thing.
make them more objective, for lack of a better term, by appointing folks from the community. And their job was to essentially research communities of similar size and similar council members and see what other folks were paying to make sure that if it was too low, it got brought up, and if it was too high, it got brought down. So, I mean, that's what the role is. So I would caution council to not infringe in that commission's duties. I mean, I think it's appropriate for a council to maybe give information to Karen that she can share with the committee as to what the council may be thinking, but attending meetings or having them here in a sense, you know,
Negotiating, yes.
bartering back and forth, for lack of a better term, is probably not wise.
I guess, would it be appropriate for them to just tell us how they arrived at the decision that they made? Not necessarily us have an opportunity to say, well, we want another decision. Just, could they share that with us?
What I recall from the last time they presented to council, and this is just from my memory, don't take this as being gospel, but what I recall was there was some concern that certain council members were attending a lot of meetings. And so their per diem for the meetings was up compared to other council members. And so I think there was an intent to try to get all council members to get relatively the same amount. Now, the mayor gets a little bit more in salary, but not drastically more. But as far as what you get for meetings, there was some concern, and like I said, I don't express this as being gospel, but there was some concern that some members may have been attending more meetings than what was reasonable. Okay, and so they were getting a lot in per diem in addition to their salary. So what I believe their last recommendation was rather than giving a per diem for each individual meeting, they wanted to set a salary and then give a little bit more to take into account the meetings that was attended. There was some resistance to that because it was almost the thought then, well then, it doesn't make those meetings as important to individual council members. They may not attend as many because they're getting the same amount whether they attend 10 or 20 or 30. So that was the discussion that kind of went back. Coupled with that discussion was the fact that council was clear that it thought, because of the budget constraints that the city was under, that council should consider reducing its own pay. So at the time, council rejected that last commission's recommendation, but I think in the back of council's mind at that time was they intended to reduce the pay anyways. So they didn't think that what the commission did was enough, and they wanted to do it anyways.
Does the council, if you have a commission which its job is to set that pay, unless the council rejects whatever the recommendation is, can council then reject and then later say, here's what we're gonna set it at? Because in essence, are you circumventing, and why have the commission if the council's gonna set
Right.
the salary anyways by saying no, and now we're gonna do this, either a bigger cut or a bigger increase, whatever it may be?
It's,
What's the purpose of the commission?
yeah, the council, if the council either accepts what they recommend or rejects it, either way, up or down. So, I mean, if they recommended a lower wage and you rejected it, you would stay at your current wage. If they recommended a higher wage and rejected it, you'd stay at the current wage. So you can't go back after the fact and say, well, we're gonna,
Cut it more.
well,
Can you do it?
I think when everybody voluntarily agreed to cut it, you can voluntarily agree to cut, you can't voluntarily agree to raise above what the commission says you should get. So it kind of works in the opposite. If you reject, you stay where you're at, you can cut it. You can't reject, stay where you're at, and then decide during the year, we're gonna raise it. You can't do that.
but we can cut it because
You
we
cut
did.
it. Right.
And those were,
At this point.
those were taken up to the commission.
Correct.
Yeah.
And that information was taken back to them, and obviously they weren't gonna,
And that was a good clarification, because that was the issue, was the compensation for the meetings, because we did have a discussion about some council members being on committees that meet quite a bit more often than other committees do, and some council members that have more time to go to those meetings.
Is that where, you just forgive me, but I'm trying to catch up on the history of it too, the cap then that we have within the meetings and stuff, was that set by the council in the past, I'm assuming?
That was set by the
There was-
commission.
That was set by the
Okay.
commission. That was the commission's
That was the
recommendation.
commission's recommendation.
That was just this last time.
Okay, all right.
And that's a good example, the Board of Review, they had very low, and it was a long day, so some of the commission, our council asked me to ask them, could you raise that a half day and a full day, and they did. So those things did go back to the commission, and they did consider them.
This is probably does this jostling back and forth about being paid for meetings interfere with what when we sign on the dotted line and say, yes, we agree to serve as a council person, and this is part of the deal. Are we interfering in any way with what we've said we would do, what we are elected to do?
Well, this, from a public perception standpoint, I would be concerned if my council member didn't go to any committee meetings. I mean, if you were just drawing that wage and I found out at the end of the year that you went to 3, just like if I found out somebody went to 30, I would tend to believe, well, the guy or gal that went to 30 is more interested in what's going on in our city. But there's nothing that requires you to go to those committee meetings. You don't. It's not like a council meeting. The charter's clear. You miss so many council meetings in a row, you can be essentially reprimanded and suspended from council. But the same rule doesn't apply to the committee meetings. The committee meetings are when each council member accepts an assignment to a particular committee, there's a thought that they're interested in that and they're going to attend the meetings to the best of their ability, knowing that there's going to be a meeting here or there that's going to overlap with vacation or some other emergency or some other thing that's as important that you don't attend. But there's no rule per se that requires you to attend the committee meetings of the committees you're on, other than you're public servants, and when you accept the role of a public servant, everybody expects that you're going to serve those committees.
Exactly.
So if you're okay with the process, then we can continue and maybe just keep the communication. I can keep that between the two of you. I can keep that more open, and that might.
I think that's the thing, from what I'm understanding, it's the communication that is kind of broke down. It was more of there was no recommendations given ahead of time, and the only thing we could do was reject, and they thought it sounded like they thought they were spinning their wheels quite a
Right.
bit and not really, providing valuable work, which they do.
Now, can the commission come here and present their recommendations as long as they don't, as long as you're not negotiating, at least then you could answer questions, or they could? Okay.
I think I would appreciate that, and they meet again, I understand that they meet again this year for our next
Correct.
term.
They will meet in December.
Can they be, prior to their meeting, can you dig up some of the dialogue perhaps from the council members that were here when we rejected their last plan? I don't know what they were given from that, whether they were just told, well, they rejected another one of your recommendations, or were they given some actual dialogue that what the
Okay.
issues were?
I can maybe pull out the minutes. I could probably also give you their minutes when and to show you how they do things.
The law allows them to meet up to 15 times, 15 sessions during that year. So I'm assuming if they got what they thought was good feedback or valuable feedback from council, as long as it's not over-the-top feedback, I would think that they would like that, and that they would probably feel like what their work is more invested in. I think the perception for them, from what I'm understanding, is that they kind of feel like their work has been not considered important by council. And those are my words, obviously. I don't speak on behalf of Joanne Fletcher Gallagher, but that's my impression, that she feels like, we did a lot of work, and you just rejected it anyways. So I think if there is feedback, they would probably feel more invested in the process.
And that wasn't the first time, from
And
what
it
I
was
understand.
rejected multiple times, right?
That's what, yeah.
And there's been
I
many
understand
times when it hasn't been, and there's been many times when there are no suggestions from council. It's not a routine thing. When they started getting meeting per diems, when that discussion started, there was a lot of suggestions at that time, but that's pretty much been ironed out. We have a list of approved meetings, so.
The charter says you guys get $5 per meeting.
Yeah.
The mayor gets $200 per year. So you might want to consider that the local compensation
that.
committee has your best interest at heart.
I would say so.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks, Eric. All right, communications and petitions, Northern Lights Arena, request for variance on outdoor archery shooting during the outdoor extravaganza on September 6th through September 8th, 2013. I didn't ask who was presenting that.
Tim Nunn, I
Tim's
think.
here.
Brought pictures, if you would like to see pictures.
Because archery tag sounds a little alarming, so.
It's actually, the archery tag is it's compound, or not compound bows, recurve bows that don't have a poundage of over 28 pounds. And they're just big marshmallows on the end of them. It's laser tags, it's archery's version of laser tag. You know, they have helmet protection, all that stuff, so, got a guy from Traverse City coming over for that. But the big thing is, and I don't know if you want to pass this around, this is what the 3D pop-up looks like. I've talked with Ivan Sumricks. He's willing to get me the hay bales for the protection behind the targets and in front of them. The yardage would be anywhere from 18 yards up to 35 yards. We're thinking about having it on the east side of the parking lot, back where the wood's backed up to it. And having the back of it, for safety reasons, having berms built up back there with the existing sand that they used to use from the rodeos. So, and the clay, so you don't have to worry about errant arrows. I've also talked to the insurance company, and we are covered for that.
Wayward arrows, huh?
Yeah. So,
It's recurves.
well, the archery, just for the archery tag, that's recurve.
That's recurves.
Right. This right here is actually competition. So this is a air-driven piece of equipment. They pop up, you shoot from an elevated stand, which is basically what we're gonna do, is have trailers brought in. Everything's gonna be roped off, for safety reasons, obviously. We'll also have the walleye club coming in. They're gonna have stuff for the kids tying their own walleye lures, they get to keep them. I've got QDMA coming in. Herb is coming in, and he's going to do a presentation on aging of deer and deer management. So it's not really just archery. We're really trying to make it a big thing. We think there's a lot of potential for it. I've talked to Frank's down in Linwood. They said that they're all about it. They want to send up banners and product. It's just a bad time of the year. So next year, they said, if you can change the date, we're in. We want to bring people here. So Struthers Archery, which is out of Imlay City, it's their piece of equipment. They make bows. I actually shoot one of theirs, but in Michigan. They're Michigan made. So just think it's a good opportunity for us to bring people here. So.
Greg, did Joel have a opinion, or?
Just, I received a request from this, and don't have any concern at all. I think we're going to take adequate safety measures. I think it's a great thing to bring to the community, and given a controlled environment, I think I can endorse this. So no concerns here.
We'd appreciate them to come and look at stuff while we're doing it too, to set up, anybody, so.
Sounds good.
Cameron?
Thanks, Bill.
Good? My son's big into
Mike's family says it's okay,
Mike's family
we're
says
good.
it's okay, yes, we're good.
Thank you.
My son's big into
Does anybody have any other questions for Tim before he goes?
I noticed a lot of these activities are for kids. But can anybody come and learn how to make a crawler harness?
Absolutely.
I mean,
Yeah, there's no age limit on it. So, absolutely, yeah. This is for anybody, so that's what we're trying to, multi-purpose arena, that's the goal, is to get other revenue, or, other, stuff out there to use it, utilize it the way it needs to be utilized, especially when there's not a lot going on at that time of the year. Now, is this gonna be the same time every year? Probably not. What I'm finding out from our big supporters, they really would rather have, September's their busiest time of the year. You got your deer season's coming up, your ice fishing, so they're really limited on what they can do. So we're probably gonna scale it to a different time of the year, by the beginning of spring, somewhere in there, because we just think that we'll be able to get bigger names here, so.
and it's all free.
Yeah, the tournament will be a charge, and there will be a little bit of a charge for the archery tag, because, we gotta pay them to get here too, and it is to raise money for Northern Lights Arena.
Okay.
So is there gonna be a big cost? No, not really, you're gonna be able to come in and do it relatively inexpensive, but also be safe.
There's several mentoring programs in town, and one of them is the Boys and Girls Club. And I think this would be an excellent activity
Absolutely.
for a mentor and mentee.
We've also
So
got
we might
involved in
advertise
it
it that way, too.
is center shot archery. So if I get the okay, I told them that today was the decision. I'm calling them tomorrow to let them know yes or no if we can go with it. And I've got probably 5 or 6 people that are ready to hit the ground running and, start doing this, so. And we intend to have it outside, obviously, so. We could do it inside, but then there's just more, I'd rather have it outside, so. But if the weather doesn't permit it, we will have it inside.
Excellent. So what you're asking for is a variance on our firearm ordinance, and quite frankly, with the police chief's endorsement, I feel comfortable. If anybody has any other questions, or if anybody would like to make a move on that.
I'd make a motion that
Second.
we approve the variance on the ordinance.
Second.
Oh, I see.
This is not very good here.
For the dates.
Yes, for the dates. That we specified, the 6th through the 8th.
For the 6th through the 8th.
Okay.
No, now.
Yes, it is.
Thank
Nope.
you.
Thank you, Ken.
Nowak,
Yes.
Sexton,
Yes.
Walagora,
Aye.
Eiler.
Yes.
Nielsen.
Yes.
You are watching All About Alpena.